Hello, hello, hello. It is another Wednesday weekly wind down chat. Say that say that really fast, like 7 times fast, right? Weekly Wednesday wind down chat. Weekly Wednesday wind down. Yeah. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. But again, I am here another week in a row. This is like week 3 in a row. I'm so excited that not only have I been consistent, but those who are watching are sticking with me because again, it's another Wednesday with another conversation that I want to have. And this is a conversation I've seen online a few times, which is about adult relationships and adult friendships. I talk a lot about dating over 30 on my podcast, Dating Over 30 Sucks, which you can find anywhere that you find podcasts. And that is primarily about dating and relationships and everything that comes with it. But today, I decided to do the subject of friendships because not only have I seen it, but even with my personal friends, we battle a lot with what it means to be a good friend. And at times, when new relationships start to happen and friends that you could always depend on, who were always there for you, end up going into their relationships, and then you're kind of like, okay, what do I do? Making new friends as an adult is not easy at all. And one conversation that I remember having was with Cinnamon on the Driven Spice. If you don't follow her channel, you absolutely should. She has a lot of great information. She talked about friendships as an introvert. She's an introvert. I'm someone who's an extrovert. And so, though as an extrovert, I will talk to anybody, I will talk to anybody for hours, for days, for years, for months, for whatever. I realize that though I may be very extroverted and I'll talk to everybody, creating strong friendships is still very, very, very challenging for me. And so I decided to put on my very unsolicited advice hat today and talk about creating friendships and what it's like to do that as an adult, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Again, this is a subject I've thought about. I've kind of taken certain things into consideration. So we're going to jump right into it. I hope that you have a glass of wine. I am still drinking my delicious Pinot Noir. It's the same bottle from last week. And so I'm going to go ahead and take a sip and then we are going to get right into it. So, one thing that I thought was really interesting when thinking about making friendships as an adult, one of the biggest challenges is finding where you can create those adult relationships and how you can make it work, right? So, as an adult, we spend most of our time at work. If you are a working adult, you spend most of your time at work. If you are a stay at home parent, you may not be working every day, but you are working because you're with your kids all day. You're taking care of them, taking care of the house, trying to take care of yourself and your family. But you are constantly doing things for others, especially if you are in a setting. Like I said, if you're at a work setting. One thing I have found very difficult, even being a single person working, when it comes to making relationships at work, is that a lot of times people at your job are very interesting, right? If you work in an industry that you're not really passionate about, then you're generally working with other people who might be in an industry that they are passionate about, so you don't have a lot of things in common. Or you could work in a place where, for myself, I worked in busy environments, but I actually worked with some really, really cool people where we could go for drinks after work, right? Or go to happy hour. Well, it's still hard in those spaces to really navigate friendships, right? What can I do or hang out with someone or talk to someone who I'm going out to happy hour with, but I still have to see them when I go in on Monday or Tuesday, or if we go to happy hour on Thursday, I'm gonna see them Friday, right? Like, how do I navigate what a friendship looks like with somebody who I might be casually cool with, but we're work friends, right? Or like that's my work husband. It's cute from 9 to 5, but after 5, I kind of have my own life and I have my own personality and the things I want to do. Hey Layla, I see you in the chat. Another really interesting thing about creating friendships, especially as an adult, is that we generally tend to gravitate to what we know. I've realized that most of my adult friends that I'm very close to are my college friends. All of my college friends, many of them ended up living in the area that I lived in. Some of them lived very close to me, so we were able to see each other, maybe not all the time, but we were able to see each other a lot more frequently. So it was, again, very, very challenging to decide to make those friendships work, or not to leave those or abandon those friendships because they were so familiar. I even found myself making friends with my college friends who we weren't even cool in college. Like, we knew each other in college, we may have had mutual friends, but we didn't have the same experiences in college. You know, we kind of knew each other in passing, but because they are in the same area or in the same job field, as we've left college, we ended up becoming friends. I have a lot of college friends like that. We didn't experience all the same things in college. We didn't go to school at the exact same time. But then once we got out of school, we ended up both being in the same area. We ended up getting really, really, really close. So college friends are another ones that we generally tend to lean into. And then of course, I always like to call our super familiar friends. So that's family friends, right? Like, oh, my mom and his mom are best friends and we've known each other since we were 3, right? So those friends who are technically family but not technically family, but they're kind of like family, we have those friends. And I realize that I have those in all stages. But recently I moved and I'm currently a career changer. So finding friends and establishing friendships right now for me has been legitimately scary AF. Because, of course, we get hung up as adults on things like loyalty. Who's going to be loyal? Trust. Who are these people and how do I know I can trust them? How do I know they're not going to screw me over? And then time. We look at a lot of our friendships that we currently have and we base it on time. How many of you, like, let's keep it funky, how many of you say, well, I know this person and we're really good friends. We've known each other for insert amount of years. So like my best friend. Oh my gosh, my best friend. We've known each other since our freshman year of college. We've known each other now for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? Like this is my high school friend. We've known each other for 30 years, you know, or like we've known each other for 30 years. We've known each other since we were in elementary school. I think a lot of times we value certain friendships more so based off of the time marker that we've known people, and we put that above everything. And the idea of finding someone, being friends, and starting that clock over can be very daunting. So, for instance, a lot of my very, very, very closest girlfriends, I kind of have them in my mind based off of how many years I've known them. So there's a certain amount of them. I'm like, technically, they're all my best friends because we've known each other for over 10 years. I also have some friends where I'm like, we've known each other for over 15 years, right? These are friends who I've known since like freshman year of college or when I was in high school. These are people I consider like family. Like they have known me for almost half of my life. So this is like family. They know my people. I know their people. I've been to their house. They've been to mine. They know my family. I know their, like, we're like family, right? We put them in that. But now I'm also realizing that I do have some friend relationships that are all very, very, very new. So in 2019, I went out to California when I left my job and left my career and was really on this whole journey of self. when I was in college, when I was in California, I met a really good friend of mine now, and we literally met after going to an event and then going to a happy hour and then going to a friend's house, and we ended up just getting really, really, really close. This is someone who is my confidant. Of course, my phone rings. Ah, sorry. Of course, my phone rings while I'm doing this because it doesn't ring any other time. Anyway, so of course, me and this person, we end up getting to be really, really close. It was very weird at times because it's hard for me. We're still learning each other. It's like a real relationship. Like, we're still learning each other. We're still learning the right things, the wrong things to say, even co-mixing like his friends with me or my friends with him. But one thing that makes it also very challenging is that we're adults and we're very, very new friends. And so, though we are really close, we have a lot of things in common and we can literally talk for hours on hours on hours. It is still very, very nerve wracking because I think we're still very much so in the trust phase. We've now known each other for 3 years. That is still my boo. I would do anything for him, but it is still very, very, very much so a challenge. So, I have a few little notes that I took, and it is about ways that you can find those good friends, put your guards down, specifically those adult guards that we didn't have as kids, and ways that you can be cognizant of starting relationships and friendships with people who are introverts and extroverts. So, we're going to have a little sip and then we're going to get into it. So, one thing that I found to be important when trying to establish friendships as an adult is to not get in your head about it. One thing I notice is as adults, we put those labels on ourselves. Oh, I'm an introvert, or I'm an extrovert, or I'm a INTJ, or I'm an NTJ, or whatever, right? Like, you start to pull out your Myers-Briggs and all of these things, right, to determine the type of friend or relationship that you should have. But if you look at kids on the playground, they don't do all that. They don't do all that. Kids who are a little more introverted, who are a little more shy, they'll be a little more hesitant to get on the monkey bars or go down the slide. The kids who are carefree and more extrovert, they'll be the ones that'll kind of run past them or say, no, go ahead, and push them a little bit, right? But kids don't have the hangups that we have as adults. Kids don't have the boundaries because kids are carefree. And one of my really good friends who had moved and was talking about having these adult relationships, I told her, I was like, just look at it the same way that little kids look at making friends on the playground. Just do it. I think we put so much of our guard up because we've been hurt. We've had life experiences. But sometimes those guards prevent us from just meeting new people and having good friendships. Now, I know if you have watched my first live a few weeks ago about dating in Portugal, you'd be like, hey girl, ain't you the one who met that man and went to the bar and he done tried to attack you? Like, ain't that you? Shouldn't you have some more guards up? Yeah, no. I say yes and no because though that was a crazy experience, the fact of the matter is, A, I learned something from it. B, I know how to protect myself. And C, I did not let that stop me from making friends and still going out in Porto, in Lisbon, or when I go to any other country. I did not let it stop me from doing those things because bad things happen to good people. Most importantly, bad things happen all the time, no matter where you are. We can't let it stop our lives. So that's the reason why I say it makes sense and it's not a bad thing to still go into these relationships and meeting people very carefree. Kids, when they go on the playground and they go out and play and they're not thinking about hang-ups and they're not being super, super overly cautious about the other kids, that they're hanging out with. They don't think of things like race, right? We talk about that. They don't think about things like race and gender. They're kids. They're just going out there having a good time. Those are learned behaviors. That's one of those things that not only we can unlearn, but we can still do it while keeping ourselves safe. And I think what we lose when we stop just when I think what we lose when we overthink things is really good relationships that could have come, but we were too busy in our head. So I think it's really important at times to look at adult friendships the exact same way. The exact same way that we look at childhood friendships. Kids on the playground, right? Remember that. Just go into it to have fun. If you meet someone you like and they're cool and you hang out again or you go grab drinks again, cool. You don't gotta go into a friendship and give somebody your social security number and, your dog's first name, right? Like so they can steal your bank account. You don't gotta do all that. All you're doing is going into it to have a good conversation, a good laugh. If things work out, cool. Exchange Instagrams, talk to that person later. If not, keep going. I'm someone who loves to solo travel. I'd rather solo travel than group travel. Right now, I am currently going to be group traveling with a bunch of people, and I'll tell y'all about that towards the end of the video. And I am starting to have anxiety attacks because I am so nervous. I'm meeting new people, but it's because I'm used to going and doing my own thing and making friends and, going and getting lost in the sauce. Like, that's just what I do. But being around a bunch of new people that I really don't know and trying to be on their time just doesn't work for me, right? But I've decided to let my guard down and say, I'm going to go on this group trip the same way I go on my solo trips. I'm going to have a good time. If people want to have a good time and do things I want to do, cool. If they don't, they could do their own thing. We are all grown. So the next thing that I think is really important is that kids base their friendships off vibes and similar interests. I think this is something that we should start to do as adults. So the reason why I use kids as a great example is because I have a little nephew, and so I've taken him to the park, I've taken him to the zoo, and it's very interesting observing kids when they are with each other. Kids go off vibes. Have you ever noticed in, say, like the zoo or in the mall, there's that one kid who's fussy and crying and falling out and everything. And even other little kids will see them and be like, ooh, child. And they'll do their thing, right? It's very rare you'll see a kid act up and then other kids who don't know them start acting up too, right? Most of the time kids are like, that kid's fussy. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to do my own thing. They kind of shy away from that because kids pick up on vibes. I notice that if I'm having a bad day, sometimes my nephew will come and he'll give me a hug or he'll give me a kiss or he'll start to talk nice to me if he knows I'm in a bad mood or if I'm sad, because kids pick up on vibes, kind of like dogs, right? Like, that's the reason why, dogs are trained to be with kids who have emotional issues, right? Because they can pick up on vibes. As an adult, I think a lot of times because we have so many preconceived notions, we have preconceived notions about women, right? Women who look at women, black women who look at white women and other women, women and men, and all women and people of LGBTQ, right? Like, we have these preconceived notions, and a lot of times that holds us back, or those preconceived mental things are what hold us up before we have conversations, before we engage. I think a lot of times if we get out of our head and get into our feelings, then we won't have that issue. One thing that I know many people may understand or are more familiar with is like when you go out for drinks and people are talking to everybody. Why is that? It's because we can have a drink, we loosen up a little bit, and we become a little bit more of ourselves. We relax ourselves. We then have conversations. You see all the time if it's someone drunk and they talk to someone else and it's like, ooh, they don't feel like being bothered. Okay, let me not. Okay, I'm gonna leave you alone, right? And people who are open to it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is my new best friend. That liquor, all it does, or whatever your drug of choice is, all that does is just loosen you up. It gets you back to that kid stage. But you read vibes, and you generally are able to read vibes a lot stronger in that sense than you would if you hadn't had a drink or two, right? So I think whether you decide to drink or not, like I'm having my wine tonight, hey, you may decide you're not going to have your wine or your water, whatever, your smoothie. At the end of the day, I think if we go off of vibes when we're meeting new people instead of some of those preconceived notions and stereotypes, that'll allow us to pick up on those type of relationships. So, I have three tips. Three tips to being a smart extrovert making friends, along with ideas for introverts who are trying to make new friends. So, I am an extrovert. Though I'm not 100% an extrovert, I consider myself more extrovert than introvert. I have my introverted ways. And there are people who are very, very much so introverts. And one thing I think is always funny is when I meet introverts who are like, oh, I'm an introvert. Like 100% introvert, there's no extrovert in me. Yes, there is. I don't believe anybody's all of one thing, right? Even if you do Myers-Briggs, you're never going to be 100% of one thing. There's always going to be that little something that makes us different. It's also interesting because a lot of my friends and people I've met who say they're introverts are generally in extrovert lines of work. I knew someone who said, I'm an introvert, and they were over like all of the students at my university. Like their whole job was student interaction. So I'm like, well, you can't be that much of an introvert if your job is literally to work with students, college students, all day, right? So there's always a little bit of each in us. I think it's really interesting to figure out what you are and how you use that to interact. So here are my three tips, especially for those who are extroverts and you are making friends or you're in situations where you can meet other people and you pick up on vibes and you realize they're introverts. I think this is really, really helpful specifically because this is how I navigate it. And some of my very good friends who are introverts will tell you, they'll be like, yeah, she's crazy. Like when I met her, it was a lot, but she's really cool. And, I was able to kind of warm up to her and be cool. Because I tell people all the time, most of the time I kind of know who's introverts, but I make friends with everybody. So you're going to love me regardless. So here's my tips. So one of the first ones that I have, if you are an extrovert and you are making friends with anyone specifically, but with introverts, as extroverts, the first thing you do is to go slow. As extroverts, it's easy to go full out with your personality. It's always important to take it down a notch with introverts. One of my really good friends, I met him through college friends. He's an introvert. And before he even went to college, he was like, I'm an introvert. I'm someone who really only hangs out with the few people I know that I grew up with, and that was it. So coming to school was a huge eye-opener for him because he's now seeing and being around all these new people. Well, one thing I realize is that it takes time. Introverts in bigger situations and larger crowds, they're like, it's like they're stepping into the pool. They're like dipping their toe in. Even though it's hot outside, even though they know they want to jump in the pool, they still got to test the waters. As an extrovert, we'll be the ones to push somebody in the pool, right? As an extrovert, if it's hot, I'm running in, right? Extroverts are the one running into the pool, running into the ocean, whereas introverts are taking their time. When you're trying to make friends with introverts, especially in group settings, you really just have to take it slow. You have to bring that personality down a notch. Sometimes when I'm around a lot of friends is, hey, it's the big hey, it's me screaming, I'm loud, I'm hugging, I'm, oh my God, what? I'm doing all the typical black girl things. But when it comes to introverts, I know I have to bring that significantly down. I'm going to have to tone it down. It's not dimming my light, right? But it's really just making sure I take my time with people who truly, truly need to test the waters. And someone being big, it's just not going to work with them. So I always say, take it down a notch. Number two, read the room. I found that the uncomfortable feeling may not be said, so you'll have to read the nonverbal cues. One thing I've noticed about some of my introvert friends is they'll be quiet, they won't say anything, or they'll just kind of nod in agreement. They're not going to really speak their mind. They're not going to jump into a conversation naturally. And so sometimes you really just have to read the room. One thing I always learned, specifically in college and in leadership roles, is that it's not always about what I'm saying, but it's more so about what I'm able to hear and listen to. So really just stopping, hearing what people say, opening the conversation up for others to make to say what they have to say. So me being in conversations, leading conversations, and then saying, hey, what do you think? And listening and being quiet and being still, letting them say everything. Even if I'm giving those follow-up questions to pull a little bit more out of them, not going overboard with it, but truly being able to read the room, read those nonverbals, read their body language, because that to me is what has made me really successful in two things. Number one, making a lot of friends, especially when I'm out of the country, and making friends wherever I go. And two, in my podcast. So when I do my podcast, Dating Over 30 Sucks, and I'm interviewing my friends, I will say about 70% of the people that I have interviewed, and I have about 17 episodes out. So about 70, I would say 70% of the people I've interviewed on my podcast, none of them would consider themselves extrovert. Most of them will probably consider themselves introvert. Most of them, when I even told them, were like, oh, I don't know what I would even talk about. Who wouldn't hear what I gotta say? Yeah. But I pulled it out of them because they know my personality. They're able to trust me. But at the same time, I was able to turn it down a notch, turn that extrovert down a bit, make them comfortable, especially on the microphone. But most importantly, I read their cues. I read them, even though we're having this conversation, as we're talking, I'm able to read those social cues. I'm able to sit in the silence and take time to let them warm up when they're on the mic. So that's all it takes. Sometimes it's really about reading the room as an extrovert, and even as an introvert, knowing when extroverts are taking it down a notch and giving you that space. Go ahead and take it. Last one, which is number 3, find that common interest and stick to it. I'm the type who can talk about 100 subjects all at once. I have stories for days, but that can be too much and overwhelming. So that's why I have this channel, so I can just talk about whatever I want to, because it's my channel. Why not? But one thing I've found when it comes to adult friendships, specifically when you're dealing with introverts and extroverts, as extroverts, we can go on and on about several things. When you hear an introvert say, oh, yeah, I'm actually familiar with that, that is your cue, your verbal cue, to stick to that subject. So, my friend, I'll call him M. When we first met, again, me, big personality, him kind of like trying to fill her out, talking about everything with all my other friends, blah, blah, blah. And then I came onto the subject of football. So I was like, oh, yeah, big football fan, his cousin, we like the same team, both New York Giants fans. I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, well, what about you? Like, what team do you like? He told me he liked Detroit. Instead of being like, oh, Detroit, don't know nothing about him. So, yeah, oh, my God. I was like, you know what? Let's talk about Detroit. We then engage in a full conversation about the Detroit Lions. If you know anything about the NFL, trust me, no matter when this conversation happened, the Detroit Lions weren't good. They aren't good. And there's not much to talk about with the Detroit Lions, probably in the past decade, right? So, but I knew that that was his one thing. That, and I also knew that was my end, to have a comfortable conversation. He can then know I have some football knowledge. I have very little about the Detroit Lions, but I have football knowledge. And we can have a conversation about football because I'm comfortable talking about football. And he then became open to talking to me about football. And that was my end. Introverts, no matter how introverted they are, they'll find, if they know that you're interested and you're willing to have a conversation about that one little thing that sparks interest, that one little thing of commonality, you're in good. And that's with a lot of relationships, right? With dating, free little free smoke, a little free keys for you. A lot of times when we're in that initial stage or that interview stage and we're just rattling off and we're just yakking our mouths, what is very interesting is you have to not only take the time to listen, but listen to those few key things, because they'll tell you everything you need to know. My introverted friend M was like, yeah, Detroit Lions. We then have a conversation and we have we had a huge conversation about it. And now we the best of friends. That's my homie. I can call him for anything. He looked out for me this past Saturday. Like, it just takes time. And that was also an adult relationship, adult friendship that I had. But I think what's the takeaway should be, it's not impossible. We have to work at it. We shouldn't be in our heads as much. And at the very end of the day, look at adult friendships, look at adult relationships, whether you're introvert or extrovert. Look at them the same way that little kids do on a playground. You go to a playground, you might make a friend for life. Kids will be like, oh, I want to hang out with them later. Can I stay here? Can I do this, that? Parents connect. Next thing you know, these kids are hanging out and having play dates over and over again, right? And sometimes the kids are like, oh, I'm ready to go. Oh, yeah, I have friends. I have fun with my friends. I have fun with them, but it's time to go. That's not the long-lasting relationship that that kid wants to have, right? That's okay. I know there are apps, of course, that do this. I think Bumble now does friendships. I wouldn't suggest it. It's kind of weird to me. But who am I to yuck your yum? So I really hope that all of this babbling, especially as I'm drinking my wine, I hope there was some great tips in there. I hope people are able to watch the replay and get a little something out of it. What I have decided I'm going to do, so as we end that conversation and what's next, I have started to get really, really busy. One thing I am doing is I'm working with someone and we're producing a podcast. I'm producing a podcast for someone, which I'm really excited about. I just had my first meeting and more details to come about that. So I am starting to just really dive deep into this creative thing. So I'm producing a podcast for someone. I am also still working with my good friend to produce our weekly show. It's going to be a lot more curated than this hodgepodge of what I'm doing now. But we're still looking to produce that show and launching it in March. So more details to come about that. But most importantly, next Wednesday. So my goal was to do this weekly wind down every Wednesday at 7 Eastern. But next Wednesday, I am going to be traveling. Next Wednesday, I am traveling to California because I am going to the Coachella Music Festival. I wish I had some round of applause to add in, but I am really excited because we got tickets last year. We knew it was going to be this year, but of course, naturally in 2021, we still didn't know what the world would look like. And so I always in the back of my mind, it was like, yeah, I'm going to Coachella, but it really just wasn't anything always on the forefront because I honestly assume like it might get canceled. Who knows? Like they might end up refunding us. Like we may never go back to live, um, to live uh, festival, like large live festivals again. But it's happening in by like February. It was like, oh, like Coachella's really happening. So I'm going to Coachella. I will be on a plane this time next week, heading out to LA, meeting up with a bunch of friends and friends of friends, and then we're going to be going out to like the valley or the desert. So, what I am potentially going to do is Thursday do a live video cast on Thursday of next week, and that will actually be live in Coachella. And I haven't fully decided how I'm going to do it. I'm not trying to, of course, bring a bunch of equipment. Like I have a ring light and camera and microphone and my laptop. I have a bunch of stuff set up to do this. But I thought it would be really, really cool to do something at the Coachella Music Festival and just give everyone a taste. But I don't exactly know what my week will look like. If anything, I will on Wednesday drop some new content. So that could be my Portuguese report card video, which I've been talking about doing, and it's just been annoying. So it might be my Portugal report card video. It might be some other content that I end up putting together, but I am going to make sure that I have some type of video that drops next week because my goal is to be consistent. So I will be consistent and make sure that I drop some type of video next week. The following week, which is the last week of April, I on Wednesday will be traveling again. So I'll be traveling to get to LA on Wednesday of next week. The following Wednesday, I will be traveling back here, back home. So the last Wednesday of the week is going to be very, very, I don't know. So we shall see. My goal is to not take 2 weeks off because I feel like if I take 2 weeks off, it's just going to break me from what I'm doing. Another thing that I will be doing is a YouTube challenge. And that is because I want to build this page. I want to get a lot better at it. I'm really still trying to figure out my message of what it is that I want to bring as far as content on a regular basis. I have literally been throwing this live together at the very, very last minute. And so I don't know how to market this. I don't really know exactly what I want my brand or my message to be, but I'm going to work on that because I have a lot of things I would love to talk about, but I want to be able to build an audience, to build the conversation, and to build better content because I just don't need to be some random chick with videos on the interwebs just talking about nothing. So my goal is to work with some YouTube professionals and work really, really hard to make sure that I'm bringing sustainable and good content to you guys every week. And so if you have suggestions about content, definitely put it in the comments below. I see all the comments. I respond to all the comments. You can also follow me on Instagram, and that's at Eat, Drink, Love, Sassy. I'll put that below, and I really appreciate another great Wind Down Wednesday where today we talked about building adult friendships, introverts versus extroverts. I hope you got something great out of it. I appreciate your time. Make sure that you like the video. And again, I will be back with more content, more weekly wind downs, not next week though, but more weekly wind downs in general. But I appreciate your time. See you later. Peace.